White South African farmers are seeking a role in land reform as the ruling African National Congress moves to change the constitution to allow for the expropriation of white-owned land to rectify racial ownership disparities. Francis Maguire reports.
More than 10 years ago, Sabi Suke and 15 other investors achieved a dream, one that few black South Africans get to experience, owning farmland. 472 hectares was first bought by the state from a white farmer and then transferred to a trust made up of hopeful black farmers. The land is in South Africa's fertile maize belt, but today lies fallow. Suke and her fellow investors weren't able to develop the land due to a lack of funding and training.
This farm does not benefit us. The government's never helped us. As you can see with this farm, we were never trained and we know nothing about farming.
Land ownership is contentious in South Africa. Most of it is still in the hands of the country's white minority. Since the end of apartheid in 1994, the ruling African National Congress has pursued a willing seller, willing buyer model, buying land from white farmers and redistributing to the black community. White cattle farmer Nick Serfontein is on a panel chosen by President Ramaphosa to speed up redistribution without hurting the economy. He says change is needed as emerging black farmers want to get into the market, but often lack direction. He also helps black farmers access loans they need to develop land.
For an emerging farmer to start, he's going to require at least, I would say, in the order of about 1 million rand, average commercial farmer, to recapitalize that farm, to put in infrastructure and to buy stock.
Serfontein has warned against the government pursuing a policy of redistributing land without compensating farmers, while some observers have also questioned the focus on land reform, when there's a growing need for housing among the country's swelling urban populations.
Well, that's Francis Maguire of Reuters with that report. The South Africa Tomorrow Investor Conference is the leading offshore South African conference for institutional investors. It promotes the country as a desirable investment destination that is open for business. This time around, the conference is being held in New York. To tell us more about the gathering is Trevor Manuel, South Africa's former Minister of Finance from 1996 to 2009. He is now President Cyril Ramaphosa's envoy on investment. He joins me live from New York. Mr. Manuel, welcome to Africa 54.
Good day, Vincent, and thank you very much for the opportunity.
You're welcome. And you see, you and 3 others have been tasked to secure a target of about $100 billion in investments over the next 5 years. To what extent will the land expropriation issue be a factor or even a challenge to you personally?
Well, land is always an issue, and I think that the Francis Hurd clip earlier reflects on the fact that since democracy we haven't adequately dealt with the land issue. President Ramaphosa has appointed a panel of 10 experts in land, academics, practitioners. Nick Serfontein, the farmer who was in that clip, is one of the members, and Nick is also a representative of organized agriculture. There are also representatives of the emerging farmer community. And I'm pretty convinced that out of a panel like that, you will have a very rational set of arguments about how to deal with the much vexed issue of land reform going forward. And my own contact with a number of prospective investors reflects the fact that it's very reassuring to have a president who appoints experts in the field, who understand the issue better, to advise on this matter. And I'm sure that by the time of our elections in May next year, we will have a lot more certainty about how to deal with this matter going forward.
Do you get concerned about some of those on both sides who tend to employ scare tactics, including innuendos of possible genocide and suggestion that they may have to go to exile in Australia and other places?
Well, there's been a rather unfortunate group called AfriForum who hark back to the darkest days of apartheid, of minority rule. They've been here in the US, they've lobbied a number of non-governmental organizations. They've apparently been around the capital as well, trying to put out a story of genocide the story of genocide is not supported by any empirical evidence, and part of the evidence has been adduced by Agri-SA, which is the organization of organized agriculture, as it were, yes. And you know, there's no genocide. There's no reality of genocide, in spite of what the propagandists in AfriForum have had to say about this.
Now, here's other reality in South Africa. The rand, South Africa's currency, is currently trading at a very weakened position. We're talking about 14 rand to $1 at the moment. How do you sell South Africa to foreign investors in this kind of environment where the economy looks like it is dragging, it is wobbling?
Well, you know, there are two parts to this. One part is that we'd like to get a lot more growth in the economy. We're talking of about 1.3% in the next 12 months. That growth is too low. And the big group of ambassadors we have for foreign investors are actually those already invested in South Africa. From my contacts in the US, in various parts of Europe, in China, those who are already invested can tell good stories about what their returns have been in general. The key issue is not what the exchange rate of the rand is traded on any day. A bigger question is volatility. Mm-hmm. And this is why the issues of macroeconomic stability, and we've had both the Governor of the Reserve Bank and the Minister of Finance at the South Africa Tomorrow conference here in New York. I think that if we get the policy issues right, we've been there before, fortunately. If we get it right, I think there's a message of predictability and certainty, which is more important than any particular exchange rate or any fixed exchange rate, for that matter.
Very quickly, Honorable Manuel, China, big on the continent. What is your engagement like with China? What do you need from China? What does China want from Africa, from South Africa specifically?
Well, the interesting thing is that about 6 weeks ago, there was a very large forum in Beijing hosted by President Xi Jinping, which is called the Forum for Africa-China Cooperation, FOCAC. And at that conference, President Xi Jinping made a commitment of $60 billion of new investment onto the African continent. It was very well received, and this can be broken down. There's no obvious claim against it. I think countries would have to contest to have access to that kind of resource. Subsequent to that, President Trump made a commitment of about $60 billion to support African development as well. Mm-hmm. And I think that he may seek to bring together existing programs, including AGOA, USAID, and try and manage the distribution of that. So it is being matched at the moment as we go ahead.
We do appreciate your thoughts. Thank you very much, Mr. Manuel. Well, that's Trevor Manuel, South Africa's former finance minister and now President Cyril Ramaphosa's envoy on investment.